Good Shabbos. Ya da 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 ya da 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 ya 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 da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 last time da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 da. Perhaps you have a tallis and you could join us as we put on the tallis. Good Shabbos. Welcome to Ahavas Chesed. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for contributing to our being a minyan beyond walls. Sometimes we offer the term prayer shawl when talking about tallis, but it's not a prayer shawl. In fact, many Jewish people have forgotten what the word tallis means. Tallis means a garment. It's just a generic term for garment. And it reminds us that 3,000 years ago, in the times of Moses and subsequent generations, when people got dressed in their normal, ordinary garb, probably adult males, we think. We're fairly confident adult males. They made sure that attached to their actual garment were these tzitzit, these fringes. And so when they were out walking about in the daily world, in the marketplace, it was very obvious who was a member of the tribe of Israel, or the tribes of Israel, I should say. And generations passed, and eventually people began to wear different types of garments. And when garments were no longer simple rectangular-shaped wraps of cloth, officially the tzitzit was no longer necessary. So we Jewish people invented a garment, which is how the word talis or talit came to be. It means garment. And then at a certain point in time, this garment, which was invented to just hold on to tzitzit to remind us of what we used to wear back in the prior times, became associated with prayer. And that's how and why people have now called it prayer shawl, and especially when we explain our traditions to people who are not Jewish and they don't understand. But we need to remind ourselves to not always translate for people who are not aware of the intricacies of our tradition. We need to hold on to elements within ourselves as well. Don't put yourself in a pattern of always explaining yourself in non-Jewish terms to others. Let's take pride in who we are. This is a talit. It's got tzitzit on it. And these have associations that go back 3,300 years. And no other nation on the planet can claim these elements. Only us. The blessing is lihita teif b'tzitzit. If you have a tallis by now, please join me in the bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lihita teif b'tzitzit. If you have a siddur, we're turning to the Matovu, which is found in the siddur on page 101. Page 101. How beautiful it is to come into a dwelling place, a home, a tent, a location that's associated with family, with individuals dedicated towards principles of God and justice and peace. That's the Matovu on page 101. Matovu halecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, v'ani berov chastecha, avo beitecha, eshtachave el hechal kodshecha, b'yiratecha, Adonai ahavti mon beitecha, Umekom mishkan kevodecha, v'ani eshtachave v'yechra, erecha lifnei Adonai osi, v'ani tefilati, lecha Adonai et ratzon, Elohim berov chastecha, aneni bemet yishecha. And now, if so able, we rise. The Birkat HaShachar, found on page 103. Page 103. And if you have the siddur, you're encouraged to follow along the service with us. And if you do not have the siddur, perhaps you know some of the early morning blessings by heart. And if you don't, feel free to say Amen at the conclusion of each sentence. And when you say Amen, it's as if you said the blessing yourself. In fact, you may get more credit if that's how God works, because you're paying attention to me and you're focusing on listening to someone else and on saying Amen, whereas I'm just saying the bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher natan lasech v'ivina, lahavchin ben yom uvein laila. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, sha'asani b'tzalmo. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, sha'asani ben chorin. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, sha'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish arumim. To top of 104. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, zokef kifufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, rokah haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, sha'asa likol tzarki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Oter Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hanoten lo yo'ef koach. Uneno yom uvachol yom lachenu chesed rachamim menachem v'nei choreim v'timnei chasim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai gamel chasimo Yisrael. May be seated. There's a contemporary prayer that's found here on page 105 on the left margin. Actually, it's a comment by Abraham Joshua Heschel, one of the foremost writers and thinkers of the past 200 years. Descendants of Abraham. What is at stake in our lives is more than the fate of one generation. In this moment, we, the living, are Israel. The tasks begun by the patriarchs, matriarchs, and prophets, and carried out by countless Jews of the past, are now entrusted to us. No other group has superseded them. We are the only channel of Jewish tradition. We are those who must save Judaism from oblivion. We are those who must hand over the entire past to the generations to come. We are either the last, the dying Jews, or else we are those who will give new life to our tradition. Rarely in our history has so much been dependent upon one generation. We shall either forfeit or enrich the legacy of the ages. Rarely in our history has so much been dependent upon one generation. All of us, you and I, gathered today in this minyan beyond walls, are responsible for transmitting the essence of Jewish life from the days of the Torah on into the future. See yourself as critical to the furtherance of Jewish life. On page 112, the Psalm for Shabbat. Mizmor shir liyom HaShabbat, tov lehodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, lahagid baboker chasdecha, ve'emunatcha balelot, alei asor v'alei navel, alei higayom bechinor, mizmor shir liyom HaShabbat, tov lodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ki simachtani roi b'falecha, b'maaseh yadecha aranen, magalu maaseh charanai, ma'oram kumachshivotecha, mizmor shir liyom HaShabbat, tov lodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. But you Adonai are exalted for all time. Surely your enemies, Adonai, surely your enemies will perish. All who commit evil will be scattered. As a wild bull raises up its horn, you raised my head high, and you, O God, anointed my head with fresh oil. I am anointed by God. As my enemies gather against me, my gaze remains steady, for my ears listen and hear. The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. The righteous planted in the house of Adonai are flourishing now in God's courtyards. In old age they remain fruitful, still fresh and bountiful, proclaiming Adonai is upright, my rock in whom there is no flaw. O dinuvum beseva, dishenim vra'ananim yu, lahagid ki yesharonoi tzrivo latabo. The Brook Shamar on page 122. Baruch Shamar, v'haya ha'olam, Baruch hu, Baruch olseh v'reshit, Baruch omer v'yoseh, Baruch gozer umekayim, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch mishalem sachar tov lireov, Baruch Chai Ad V'Kayom Lanetzach. Baruch Podeh Umatzil. Baruch Shemo. We will celebrate you, Adonai, our God, with praise and song. We will extol, acclaim, and glorify you, honoring your name and declaring that you are our sovereign God, the singular one who gives life to the world, the sovereign who is praised and glorified forever and ever. This is your great name. Baruch atah Adonai, sovereign, celebrated with songs of praise. Yachid Cheho Olamim Melech Mishubach Umafoar Adei Ad Shemo Hagadol Baruch atah Adonai Melech Melobatish Bachot. On page 136, the Ashrei, we've been studying the Ashrei these past weeks. We're now up to Hadar, the hay line. Hadar meaning glory and beauty, but not so much beauty of a physical quality, but of a spiritual, unearthly, immaterial and transcendent quality. Speaking of a sense of being, in our own mind's conception, in contact with God. Hadar kavod hodecha, the beauty, the glory of your own sense of honor, O God. And now ask yourself, by which deed, by which process do you gain a sense of honor, you yourself? How do you gain a sense of honor? It's immaterial, it's transcendent. You can't point to a sense of honor, but there's a beauty to a sense of honor. And in these days, come to think of it, as we're talking right now, I think we need to promote establishing a sense of honor of each one of ourselves, within each one, and for as many others as we can positively and respectfully influence. Let's promote honor, and we'll be in God's own image. The first 5 lines until Hadar, and then we'll conclude the Ashrei. Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha Od Yalucha Selo Ashrei Ha'am Shekachalo Ashrei Ha'am Sharonoi Elohov Tehillah LeDavid Aromim Chalohai HaMelech Va'avarcha Shimcha Leolam Va'ed Bechol Yom Avarcheka Va'ahalala Shimcha Leolam Va'ed Gadol Adonai Malal Me'od V'lig Dulato Ein Cheker Dor Lador Yeshabach Masecha Ugavurotecha Yagidu Hadar Kavod Hodecha V'divrei Niflotecha Asicha Tehillat Adonai Yedaber Pi Vivarech Kol Basar Shem Kacho Le'olam Va'ed V'anachnu Nevarech Yah Me'ata V'ad Olam Hallelujah. The concluding psalm from the book of Psalms in the Bible is found here in the siddur on page 141, page 141. And there are many different melodies. I learned this melody at Kemprama. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Bikadsho, hallelujah, Birkiauzo, hallelujah, Vigvurotav, hallelujah, Karov Gulo, hallelujah, Beteka Shofar, hallelujah, Benevel Vechinor, hallelujah, Betof Umachol, hallelujah, Beminim Vugov, hallelujah, Betiltzle Shema, hallelujah, Betiltzle Trua, Kol Hanshama Tehalelia, hallelujah, Kol Anshamat Hallel, Hallelujah. Yalla la 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 la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la 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 la, la 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 la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la 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 la, la 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 la, yalla la 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 la, yalla la 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 la. Ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, la 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 la. On page 145, please, Nishmat Kol Chai. The breath, the life force of every living thing can go out and praise you, O God. I think it's more of a reminder to me, to us, each one of us, singing and reciting these words than it is to God. God knows that anyone and everyone has a connection with God that only God understands. And the siddur is reminding us as we open the siddur every single week, at least once a week. We're supposed to pay attention to this every Shabbos morning. That the breath, the soul, the life force of many people out there in the world all have a connection to God. In other words, you don't have to be Jewish to be connected to God. And if we Jewish people open our minds to the beauty of life itself, recognizing that everyone has a connection with God and God has a connection with everyone, then we can appreciate more deeply the tapestry of life, of which we are a significant thread, but not the only thread. Nishmat kol chai tevarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu v'ruach kol basar tifaer u'troim z'chamak tamid. Matir asurim, asomet noflim, v'zokivuvim. Ram Venisa on page 147, first red arrow. Shochenad marom v'kadosh shemo v'chatuv ranenu tzadikim baronoi Lail sharim nava tehillah Befi Yesharim Tit Halal Uvedivrei Tzadikim Tit Barach Uvel Shan Chasidim Tit Ramam Uvekerev Kidoshim Tit Kadosh Uvamakalot Rivavot Amcha Beit Yisrael. Lodo lahalel leshabech lefaer loremem lahader levrach lalekales. Al kol divrei shiro v'tish bechot David ben Yishai Avdecha Meshichecha. Top of 148. Yishtabach Shimcha Lord Malkeinu Ha'el HaMelech Hagadol v'Hakadosh B'Shamayim u'Ba'aretz Ki lecha na'eh Adonai Eloheinu v'Eloi Avoteinu v'Imotenu Shir u'shvacha halel v'zimra ozu memshala netzach gedula u'gvura tehila v'tiferet kedusha u'malchut brachot v'arot metav yarolam baruch Adonai El Melchadobatish Bachot Elodot Adonani Float Habocher Bishrei Zimra Melchachei Olamim. There's a melody style. It's a pattern. The more appropriate term is nusach. It's nusach in Hebrew, mode in English, you might say. Yadai, da da da, yada da da da. That's early morning Shabbat. Later Shabbat is yet da 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 da, and that's also Friday night. And then of course on holidays there are different melodies. Da 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 da. Different nuschaot. The official term is nusach, singular, nuschaot, plural. Melody reminds us of where we are, early or late, morning or evening, Shabbos or Jewish holidays. It was a way of communicating. When people walked in the door and they heard the melody, they knew which service they were in. Da 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 ya da da da. Chatzi Kaddish on page 148, followed by the Borchu, the same nusach for Shabbat morning. Ya da 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 ya da 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 da. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba. Amen. Be'alma divrachir tevi mechvachute. B'chayechon v'yomechon. Ub'chayedecho be'Yisrael. Ba'gala u'bizman kariv imru. Amen. Yehi shemei rabba. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitparvad v'yinaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei kudusha brechu leila min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiron b'yom v'imro. Amen. Please rise. Baruch Hu on page 149 and 150. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Va'ed. Top of 150. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer uvarech hoshech oseh shalom uvarech et hakol. Baruch Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space, forming light and creating darkness, bringing harmony while creating all. May be seated. The bottom of 152, one short stanza of 3 lines of poetry. The opening bracha just a moment ago speaks of God's creation of light. And that, of course, reminds us of Breshit, Genesis, let there be light. Look at the bottom of 152, a short poem. You are to be praised, Adonai, our God, for the wondrous work of your hands and for the radiant lights that you have fashioned, reflecting your glory always. This poem reminds us not only to be appreciative of the lights, the sun and the moon and the stars in the heavens, but to take hold of the symbolism that physical elements which are beautiful in the world symbolically reflect the beauty of God, which is beyond this world. And we can allow that to play out in our own minds, whether it's flowers or plants or the beauty of the variety of many animals, the beauty of the variety of people. For every one of us is a constituent element of the world which God created. Think on a more frequent basis in your own life of the elements in the world around you which cause you to stop and say, oh my, how beautiful that is. And now associate those elements, whichever they may be, symbolically as bringing a little bit of God's own honor and glory into the world. Physical beauty reflecting symbolic glory. The last line of 153. Baruch Adonai Yotzer Hamorot. On page 154, gathering the tzitzit together. Pardon me. The last stanza on the English side, and then the concluding Hebrew bracha. Bring us safely from the four corners of the earth, and lead us in dignity to our land. For you are the God who effects deliverance. You have chosen us from all other tongues and peoples, always drawing us nearer to your name, that we may truly acknowledge you and lovingly proclaim your oneness. Baruch Adonai, habocher b'amo Yisrael b'ahava. 155. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'avta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadavarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha yom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'beitecha u'v'lechtecha v'derech u'v'shachbecha u'v'kumecha u'kishartam liot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha u'ktavtam al mezuzah beitecha u'v'sharecha. The middle of page 156. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor, daber el bnei Yisrael v'marta alehem v'yasu lehem tzitzit al kanfei v'gedehem l'dorotam v'natnu al tzitzit hakanaf petil techelet v'yalachem l'tzitzit Uritem oto, uschartem et kol mitzvot Adonai, v'asitem otam, v'lo taturu, acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem, asher atem zonim achareihem, l'man tizkuru, v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'item kedoshim le'elohechem, ani Adonai Elohechem, asher otzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiot lachem le'Elohim, ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet. On the bottom of page 157, one short stanza. And this stanza has as its theme that God is always throughout all reality, before time, after time, beyond all time. By the way, side note, this theme, of course, obviously comes out of the book of Breshit, but is also found in the Adon Olam. Last stanza on 157. Truly, you were at the beginning, and you will be at the end. Aside from you, we have no ruler who can redeem and deliver. The middle of page 158, please. Mi chamocha poelim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, norati lot osei felem, shira chadasha shivachu geulim, L'shimcha safat hayam, yachad kulam hodu v'imlichu v'yamro, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Tzur Yisrael, Kuma B'Ezrat Yisrael, Uvdei Chinumecha, Yehuda B'Yisrael, Go Aleinu Adonai Tzvot Shemo, Kedosh Yisrael. The top of page 159 bears a small line. We've been practicing a little bit the past few weeks, taking 3 small steps backwards and then forwards and placing ourselves in a proper comported frame of attention as we're about to talk to God directly. So 3 small steps and then 3 steps forward. Just to practice, then we'll begin actually on page 159 and 160. Adonai Sabbatai Tiftach Ufi Yagid Tilatecha. That's the practice. Now beginning aloud page 159 and 160, and thereafter a few moments of silence. The traditional text concludes on page 166, where people compose their own private prayers. Adonai Tiftach Ufi Yagid Tilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu V'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Anora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Vekonei HaKol Vezocher Chaste Avot Ve'imahot Umevi Goel Livnei V'neihem L'ma'an Shemo B'Yahava Melech Ozer Foked U'Moshiach U'Magen Baruch Atah Adonai Magnein Abraham U'Vaket Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechaye Metimata Rav Lahoshia Mashiv Haruach Murit Hagashem Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed Mechaye Metim Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Berofech Cholim Umatir Asurim Omekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Micha Mocha Bal Gevurot Omidom Elach Melech Memit Umechaye Umatzmiach Yeshua Fneman Atalachion Metim Baruch Atah Adonai Mechaye HaMetim. You probably just noticed that I took 3 small steps backward and bowed. If you have the siddur, you might turn to page 166. If not, I can explain it anyway without the siddur. The end of the Amida reminds us that we began, as we started the Amida, taking a few small steps backward and entering this zone of being in close proximity to God. So the logic within the prayer is that, well, now that we're finishing the prayer, we take 3 small steps to exit that special zone in which we were occupying this immediate contact with God. The last sentence of this concluding passage is Oseh Shalom B'Mromav. And so some people have become accustomed to taking 3 small steps backwards, Oseh Shalom B'Mromav, and bowing to the left, Hu Yaseh Shalom, to the right, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, forward, V'imru Amen. And then 3 small steps forward, and effectively we have exited that little zone in which we and God were connecting. Because people have become used to doing this for many, many centuries, taking 3 small steps backwards at the Oseh Shalom line, when the Oseh Shalom line was moved from this prayer to the Kaddish, their feet were already accustomed to doing the walking. Remember that old commercial, let your fingers do the walking through the yellow pages? Well, our feet were accustomed to taking 3 small steps backward with the Oseh Shalom line. So when we attached the Oseh Shalom line from the Amida to Kaddish, people kept on doing that. And now you understand why people take 3 small steps backward at the end of the full Kaddish. And the mourner's Kaddish also bears Oseh Shalom, 3 small steps. Bearing that all in mind, again, pardon me for a moment, we're on page 167. I apologize, I think I'm finally cleared my throat. On page 167, full Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabo, amen. Be'alma divrachutei b'chutei b'chayechon v'yimru, amen. Yehei shemei rabo mevorach, la'olam u'yalmei almaya, yitbarach. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitmarbina sevidadar v'yidalevid al shmei dekudesha, Brechu Leila min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiron be'alma v'imero. Amen. Titkabel tzloton v'ton d'chois rakadam avon divishmai v'imero. Amen. Yeh shalom m'shchayim v'imero. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mamav hu yaseh shalom oleinu v'kos v'imero. Amen. Now on page 168. Ein kamocha. Ein kamocha va'Elohim Adonai v'ein k'ma'asecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim u'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'ador Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimloch li'olam voed. Adonai oz li'amo yiten. Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Av harachamim heitiv avirtzoncha et Tzion. Tivnei chamot Yerushalayim. Tivnei chamot Yerushalayim. Ki v'cha levad b'tochnu. Melech el ram v'nisa. Adon olamim. We rise. Dave, would you open the ark? Vayehi bin soa ha'aron, vayomer Moshe, kuma Adonai, veyafutzu oevecha, veyanusu misanecha, mipanecha, ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah udavar Adonai mirushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah La'amo Yisrael B'kedushatom. We all greatly appreciate David Smith's helping with the live streaming of the services every Friday night and every Shabbat morning. The Shema is on page 171, and at this point, we begin and you reply, and so too with the Echad, and then David will carry the Torah around a bit in our chapel and bring it closer to you. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo. Galu Adonai Tinu Ramama Shemo Yachdav. L'cha Adonai Hagedul Hagavur Hatiferet V'anetzach V'hahod Ki chol b'shamayim u'va'aretz Ki chol b'shamayim u'va'aretz Adonai hamamlacha Tamid na'aseh l'chol rosh Romemo Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavo La'adam raglav kadosh hu Romemo Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavo Le'har kodsho Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Yishar koach, Gadiel. The Torah reading for today is Chaye Sarah, and if you have a Chumash, we'll begin our Torah reading on page 132. On page 132, if you have a Tanakh, not our Chumash, it's Genesis chapter 24, verse number 10. We obviously remember that we've been seeing Abraham and Sarah aging. Abraham and Sarah have been getting older, and Isaac has been growing up. In the earlier passage of this week's Torah reading, Sarah died. And after Abraham buried Sarah, he dispatched a servant to find a suitable wife for Isaac. Perhaps it was the death of his wife that reminded him that Abraham, will be going the way of all things soon, dying, and he needs to make sure that his son is properly married. And so that's where we pick up. The servant has gone off to Syria, the homeland. And just a side note, remember, Abraham and Sarah left Syria and moved to Canaan, eventually Israel. The servant went to Syria and brought back a woman from Syria to Isaac, and they were married in Israel and remained in Israel. Isaac and Rebekah later have a child, Jacob. Jacob runs away, goes to Syria, brings back his wives from Syria, and then settles in the land of Canaan, of Israel. we need to remind ourselves that our actual point of origin at the very dawn of our people was Syria. And since there were no Jewish women, no Jewish girls for the boys to marry, the next best thing was somebody from at least the orbit of the kinfolk. So we're on page 132, verse number 10. And a reminder, we don't mention this enough, but we sing Torah. We've been singing Torah for a long, long time. There's a reference in the Mishnah, which is 2,000 years old, that may be what we now call trup or chanting. So it is very likely that we've been reading Torah in this singing manner for 2,000 years. And we know from historical records and musical indicators that reading Torah in a melody has been a very specific part of our tradition for many, many centuries. In this little passage, which I'm going to chant, there's a very special trup, and you'll hear it, and then allow me a comment just a moment thereafter. We're on page 132, verse number 10. ויקח העבד 10 גמלים מגמלי אדוניו, וילך וכל טוב אדוניו בידו, ויקם וילך אל ארם נהריים אל עיר נחור, ויברך הגמלים מחוץ לעיר באר המים ליתר לצאת השבות, Adonai, Elohei, Adonai Avram, Hakrena lefanai hayom, Vasei, Chesed im Adonai Avram, Hinenochi nitzav al ein hamayim, uvnot anshe ir yotzot lishov mayim, vayan ara. Asher amar lehatina chadech ve'eshtev amra shten v'gam gemalach ashke ota hochachta lavdecha liyitzchak uvah eda ki asita chesed im Adoni. I'm sure you notice the that's called the shalshelet. It comes from the Hebrew word shalosh, which means triple. There are only 4 shalshelot in the entire Torah. What is it about this little passage that brings that very special song note to this word? The non-Israelite servant of Abraham calls out words that you and I might call a prayer. He prays to God and he says, "Oh God, the God of my master Abraham, encounter me, please. Hakrena lefanai. Encounter me, please. Come close to me this day and do chesed, do kindness with my master Abraham." This non-Israelite is reaching out to the God of the people whom we call the Hebrews. And the nation hasn't really emerged yet. Just a group of 1 or 2 people. He's willing to open himself to the possibility, the plausibility, the reality of a different type of a religious and spiritual experience than his own. He doesn't pray to his own Canaanite God. He's willing at this dramatic moment in the life of the family of Abraham to pray to what we call the God of Abraham, which is astonishing. And I think that's why our ancient tradition has attached this very specific melody to this word, to draw our attention to
the open-mindedness and the need to show honor and respect and the need to reach out from deep within. May all of us in our own lives have the capacity to be open-minded, to accept the plausibility and the reality of other people and their religious and spiritual needs and frameworks. And may other people in this world have the open-mindedness to accept the plausibility and the reality of the religious and spiritual experience of the Jewish community. When that happens, halavai. We now offer a Misha Barak for those who are ill in our community, and we have a list of names before us. If you know of someone, please mention that person's name at this time. Misha Barak Avatenu Avrim Tzvei Avtenu Sorov Kerach Chavalei Barak Repei Rachat Kol Cholim Me'alev V'Zeh Kolel Et Sheri Shem Tov Moshe Aharon ben Fega Hana Sarah ben Peshalea Avram Yehuda ben Gisha Malka bat Grace Binyamin ben Esther Malka bat Esther Scheindel Sprinzer bat Bashi Miriam bat Bashi Brian Claypool Lynn Claypool Ashley Hoey Shoshana bat Millie Eliana bat Sarimenu Yaakov Aaron ben Chana, Avi Moshe ben Mendel, Tom Bastoni, Evangeline Maldonado, Debbie Pfeiffer, Wendy Pfeiffer, Avram Melech ben Fega, Pat Cockrell, Murray Bradwell, George Patinos, Mordechai ben Zelda, Minya Elka bat Sarah, John Houston, Monica Knight, William Levy, Elalea bat Aviva, Mickey bat Cecilia, Zorak ben Leah, Shalomit Pesha, Lynn Hillman, Beth De Palma, LaClaudia Thomas, Claude Thomas, Leah Rochel bat Edith, Rafael ben Tzipora, Meir ben Mirogita, Kulam Shnis Grayam, Hash Tabaswanawar, Amen. O God, who has blessed our mothers and our fathers in ancient days and most recently, bring forth your continued blessings of healing, of strength, of resolve, of courage to all those who are ill, all those who are injured, all those who are afflicted. Lift them up with your touch, O God, the touch placed within their hearts and their minds, their bodies and their spirits. Favor them with your closeness. Strengthen them by your own presence, O God. Inspire those doctors and nurses and caregivers, the technicians, the orderlies, all those involved in healing and support, to bring their additional measures of care and compassion to all those who are afflicted, all those who are ill. To our veterans, place an additional measure of healing and of strength upon them. Safeguard them, and let each day be a day wherein they walk more uprightly and more confidently out into the world. Remove the anxiety and the fear from all those who are afflicted, and place within their hearts a sense of hope and promise. And we all say, Amen. The Torah reading today speaks somewhat of Abraham's consideration of his future. He knows he's soon to die, and he wants to make sure that his son Isaac is situated and there'll be a future for the people of Israel. The Haftarah, which is a fairly lengthy Haftarah, it's on pages 143 through 145, comes from the book of Kings. And I'm going to summarize it very briefly. King David, at his very late years, near the end of his life, is starting to decline. David doesn't anticipate that he needs to establish a successor to the throne. And one of his sons, Adoniah, sets himself up and begins to conduct himself as king without attending to the reality of David's still being king. It's interesting. It's almost an inversion of what we're seeing in modern American politics today. Except Adoniah has no sanction, no legal authority to conduct himself as king. And so Natan, the prophet, and Bathsheba, the wife, come in separately, and they inform David that if he doesn't act appropriately within the framework and the span of law, by declaring as the successor, there'll be chaos within the government. And so David decrees that Solomon is going to be the next king of the people of Israel. And the law, the establishment of successorship in the proper manner, is fulfilled and carried out. It's striking to me that our best known king hasn't anticipated and created a plan for when he will no longer be king. And it's up to his wife, thank God he had Bathsheba, and Natan, the royal prophet, the court prophet we might call him. Without the insight and the counsel of two trusted people, the king might not have created the proper successor plan. And now we lift the Torah and dress the Torah for Hagba and Galila, and in a few moments we'll be concluding the service. A reminder, please, I hope that you have wine and bread at the ready so that we can make Kiddush and Hamotzi together. V'zot ha'Torah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Yadai dai 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 dai, yadai dai 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 dai, yadai dai 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 dai, yadai dai 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 dai, yadai dai, yadai dai, yadai dai 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 dai, yadai dai 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 dai dai. Ya dai 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 dai, ya dai 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 dai, ya dai 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 dai, ya dai 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 dai, ya dai 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 dai, ya dai dai ya dai 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 dai. Hand the Torah to me, please, for just a minute. Thank you. Today is the nearly conclusion of the month of Cheshvan, and so we have a special prayer. It's Birchat HaChodesh, or benching Chodesh, blessing the upcoming month. We're asking God really to bless the upcoming month with peace and good health. If you have the siddur, it's on page 180. The new month is going to be Kislev, and it arrives on Tuesday. Tuesday's Hebrew name is Yom HaShlishi, the third day of the week. So Yom HaShlishi. And now on page 180. Yiratzon milfanecha Adonai Eloheinu v'lehei avotenu v'motenu shetachadesh aleinu et hachodesh haba latova v'livracha shetachadesh aleinu et hachodesh haba latova v'livracha v'titan lana Chaim arokim, Chaim shel shalom, Chaim shel tova, Chaim shel bracha, v'titan lanu, Chaim shel parnasa, Chaim shel chilutz atzamod, Chaim sheish b'hem yirat shamayim, v'yirat chet, Chaim shen b'hem mushach lima, Chaim shel shabbat Chaim shetevanu avat Torah v'yirat shamayim Chaim Sheimalu Mishalo Libenu Tova Amen Selah. May this new month be a month of health and physical vitality, a life filled with a sense of heaven and glory and honor, a life wherein we are filled with love of Torah and urged on to bring righteousness and justice into our world. May God, who wrought miracles for our ancestors, redeeming them from slavery to freedom, redeem us soon and gather our dispersed from the four corners of the earth. May the entire people of Israel be united in friendship. And we all say, Amen. The new month, Kislev, will begin on Tuesday. May it hold blessings for us and for all the people of Israel. Rosh Chodesh Kislev, yeh b'yom hashlishi, haba aleinu v'chol Yisrael l'tova. Amen. Returning the Torah to their own on page 184. Page 184. Put the... Thank you. Eitz Chaim hi lemachazikim ba v'tomcheha meushar deracheha darchei noam v'chol netivoteha shalom. Hashivenu Adonai Elecha V'nashuva Chadesh Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Please remain standing. Yalenu on page 205, page 205. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotzeh reshit, shelo asanu kugoyeh haratzot, velo samanu kimishpachot adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu shehu noteh shamayim v'yosed haaretz umoshav yekaro b'shamayim mima'al ushchinatu zo begavei meromim Hu Eloheinu enod emet malkeinu evesulato kakatu b'torato v'yodatayom v'shevota elevavecha ki Adonai hu Elohim Bashamayim mimal v'al haaretz mitachat enod. Kagatu b'toratecha, Adonai yimloch le'olam voed, v'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu, yihyeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. In a moment, the mourner's Kaddish, and we remember specific names at this season of the year. This is the season of specific yortzites. Remembering with love Rebecca Hirsch, Morris Brook, Nathan Siegel, Bessie Dittman, Donald Lassner, Phil Ladd, Kalman Liebeskind, Louis Morningstar, Peter Leon Sussman, Samuel Goldrich, Lloyd Maklovitz, Alan Sherman, Gertrude Maisel, Sylvan Sachs, Bunya Mishaloff, Alexander Grodnick, Saul Brown, William M. Lubell, Isidore N. Loeb, Evelyn Bloom, Mose Zivitz, Abraham Sowolovsky, William A. Lubell, remembering Harriet Rips Powers, Estelle Rosenbaum, Eunice Wertheim, Devora Rena Goren. I mentioned last night that the Jewish people lost a very special light this past week. Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs died. He was knighted by the British Crown in 2005 for his service to establishing community and interfaith relations and promoting interfaith relations. And then in 2009, he was granted a seat in the House of Lords as a baron. He gained worldwide respect and a sense of honor, always as an observant and traditional Jew, and teaching the message that Jews and Judaism are a significant conduit for holiness and dignity and righteousness, but also teaching that all people have different paths to bringing honor and dignity and integrity and spiritual fulfillment into the world. He never compromised his Jewishness and Judaism, and he gained a sense of respect and honor for that. And that's the message for all of us. We do not need to compromise our Jewishness and our Judaism and our connection to Torah to gain acceptance and respect with the non-Jewish world. He taught many people many great lessons. If you know someone else who died recently, please mention that person's name in your home. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba. Amen. Be'olma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute. B'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chaye d'chol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala u'vizman karif v'miru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach la'alam ololmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yit hadar, v'yit ale, v'yit halal, shmei dekudisha, b'richu. La'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran ba'olma v'miru. Amen. Yehei shlama, rabba, min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael, v'miru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. May all be granted shalom. We will conclude in just a moment with the Adon Olam and then Kiddush and the Hamotzi. Reminders tonight, Havdalah is at 7 on Alabama Community Virtual Havdalah. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then you've been missing something for the past 7 months. So contact me and I'll try to explain how 3 singers, 2 cantors, 2 rabbis, and a group of people from all over the state of Alabama join together for Havdalah. That's tonight, it's at 7, and it's fun. Of course, Sunday school tomorrow on Zoom, and all the parents and students know about that. Monday, Tanakh study from 12 to 1. Monday, story time for the toddlers on Zoom, 5:30 to 6. Tuesday, the Spirit series continues, 5 to 5:30. Gaining a sense of protection is the spiritual topic on Tuesday, the 17th. And we'll conclude in the Adon Olam in just a moment, and then Kiddush and Amotzi. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra liet nasa v'cheptso kol azai melech shemo nikra v'yachare kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora v'hu haya v'hu hove v'hu yiyeh Betif ara v'hu echad v'yein sheni lahamshil lo lahachbira b'li reishit b'li tachlit v'lo ha'oz v'hamisra v'hu eli v'chai goali v'tzor chevli b'yet tzara V'onisi umanosli menad kosi biyom ekra biyado avkid ruchi b'eti shan v'yaira v'imruchi geviyati Adonai li v'lo ira. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת, לדורתם ברית עולם, ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לי עולם, ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לי עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש. על כן ברך אדוני את יום השבת ויקדשהו. God bless the seventh day, made it holy, and we can bring holiness into time as well with our behavior and our focus. Savri Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Hamotzi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. May your Shabbos be sweet. May you know that you are loved and deeply cared for. May you be blessed this week and the next and the next and many more thereafter. Until we see each other again, hopefully at Havdalah tonight.